Friends, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. I would guess that not many marriages break up because a 7-year-old child watches you trying to decide which tie to wear, but that's how my marriage to Stell fell apart. I met Mary and Estella Burns in my senior year of college. She wasn't my classmate. She worked as a waitress at an off-campus pizzeria that my friends and I visited about once every 2 weeks. George, Sam, Mike and I stopped by Stell's on the second day of work. It was pretty corny of me, but when she immediately made it clear to us that she preferred Stell to Stella or Estelle. Asked us to place an order, I said. A large portion of pepperoni, a jug of Core Light, and an invitation to a date with you. She looked at her notebook, writing down the order, and when she was done, she looked at me and said, "I have days off on Wednesday and Thursday. Which one do you want? Can I have both?" I think it will depend on how the first one goes. The first one went very well, as did all the subsequent ones, especially after the 8th, when we made love for the first time. Stell was a junior when she had to drop out of school because her financial support ended when her parents died in a car accident. I found out the whole story on our 5th date. I asked her if she had enough insurance to help. If they had any money, I don't know about it. No one has ever called me about this. I know they had money in the bank, but the bank wouldn't let me get it because my name wasn't in the account and I didn't have a legal right to it. Didn't you hire a lawyer? I don't have money for a lawyer. Well, maybe fate decided that we found each other to help you. It just so happens that my Uncle Dan is a lawyer, and I can get a family discount. In short, Uncle Dan not only got her bank funds returned, but also found out that her father had a safe deposit box, and when it was opened, they found a life insurance policy for $100,000, which included a clause on payment of double compensation for accidental death, and she was listed as the beneficiary. There were also documents showing that both her mother and father had life insurance as part of the social package where they worked. $10,000 for her father and $5,000 for her mother, and both of these policies paid double the amount for accidental death, and she was listed as a secondary recipient. In 3 weeks, she turned from a penniless former student into a young lady with more than $225,000 in a bank account. I asked Stell to marry me when I graduated from high school, and she agreed, but only after she got her degree and found a job. When I finished, I had a job. It was at the company I interned at the previous 2 summers, so I pretty much settled in when I switched to a full-time job. The job paid well and I had some savings, including the $10,000 my parents gave me for graduation. So I had enough for the down payment, and I bought a house. I built it in a ranch style with 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a large backyard. There was a fairly large patio with a hot tub located to the side. When Stell first saw this, she got mad at me for not letting her participate in the deal. With the money I have from insurance, we could make a bigger down payment and maybe even pay for everything at once. If we were married, I would do so, but we are not married. But we're going to be. But only after you graduate and find a job, and before that there is at least another year and a half. A lot can happen during this time. What do you mean by that? You will meet new people, and maybe you will meet someone who will interest you. And maybe you will want to know if you have something interesting. When you start working, maybe someone will be interested in you. As I said, anything can happen in that time. You don't trust me? I have my doubts. You won't marry me until you graduate from high school, although marriage won't affect your ability to go to school in any way, and you won't even move in with me until then. I explained everything to you. Yes, and I understand your reasoning, but that in itself is enough to cause me doubts. Wanting to have a fulfilling college experience means meeting new people, trying new things, and anything can happen along the way. In fact, it has already happened. Twice in the last 2 weeks, you refused to date me because you were going to do something with some of the girls you were dating. It goes without saying that when the girls leave, the guys also go to try to get to know these girls, and sometimes something happens. What can I do to convince you that you're the man I need? This is something you're going to have to figure out on your own. Shortly after this conversation, I asked her what she would like to do next Friday, and I heard that she had already set up a date for that evening. But I'm free on Saturday. It won't work. I already have a date for Saturday. Bye. And I hung up. I didn't actually have a date for Saturday night, but I was glad I told her about it. What I had planned for Saturday was a barbecue. I invited all my new neighbors to get to know each other better. The invitation I sent out said, from 2 to any other time, and it could last until the evening. Half an hour later, Stell called me. I need to explain, and I interrupted her by saying, I'm not interested in any explanations. You're free to do whatever you want. I'm asking you, at least, not to wear my wedding ring when you're dating another man. Have fun. Bye. And I hung up. She didn't call back. The barbecue, in my opinion, was a success. I met my neighbors, and they met me. I've been asked a couple of times why a single guy without kids would want a 4-bedroom house. I explained that I have a fiancé and we are going to fill the bedrooms with children as soon as we get married. Then, of course, they asked me why she wasn't at the barbecue, and I explained that she was a college student and had things she couldn't refuse. On Sunday, Stell appeared around noon. About 15 minutes after she arrived, she asked how my date went, and I said that we ate and talked a lot, and that's all I said. She didn't press me, but I realized that she wanted more than I gave her. I didn't ask her about the date and couldn't tell if she was relieved or disappointed that I hadn't done so. The topic was closed. We spent the rest of the day talking about what needed to be done in the house and what we would like to do. Stell wanted to use the large backyard and set up a swimming pool. I said it was something we could do when we saved up some money, and she reminded me that when she got married, she would have a lot of money. I didn't say anything to that. I didn't take any action when it came to making love. I left it up to her, and she didn't make any attempts to start a relationship. She went to her room at 8, and I didn't see her on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, but I didn't expect that. I remembered all the evenings when I had to study late or spend time after classes in the library looking for the right materials. I called her on Thursday and asked her what she would like to do on Friday, and she said she already had a date for Friday. I wished her to have fun and hung up. Stell didn't know this, but all these dates she went on ended up at home sooner or later. On Friday, after returning from work, I went in for a drink with my colleagues, and it was already 9 when I returned home. When I got there, Stell's car was parked in the driveway. When I went inside, I found Stell in the bedroom, hanging clothes in the closet. She turned around, looked at me and said, "A while ago, I asked you what I needed to do to show you that you were the man I needed. You said I needed to figure this out on my own. I decided the best way to show it was to move in with you. That's exactly what I'm doing." In my opinion, it was a step in the right direction. We are used to a very comfortable daily routine. There were times when she couldn't come home for dinner because of club activities or group projects, but I didn't do anything like that while I was in school. My job sometimes forced me to leave town for the night, and twice. When I called home in the evening to tell Stell where I was staying and how to contact me, my calls went to the answering machine at home and to voicemail when I called her on her mobile. When I asked her where she had been on such occasions, she replied that she had been drinking with a couple of her girlfriends. It seemed reasonable to me. I mean, why stay at home alone when you can spend time with friends? I did it when I was in school, so why shouldn't she do the same? Sometimes I wondered if she was dating other guys, but I had a lot of single friends who visited all the hot spots, and I was sure they would let me know if she was dating guys. And she spoiled me terribly when it came to my personal life. 4 to 5 times a week and, as a rule, both days on weekends. Everything was going great until the protection broke, and we had to get married. Stell was 4 months pregnant when she walked across the stage to receive her diploma. And no, Bobby wasn't stupid. I did a DNA test, unbeknownst to Stell, as soon as Kristen was discharged home from the hospital, and she became mine. I know I said I trusted Stell, but as one of our former presidents said, trust but verify. Due to the complications that arose at the birth of Christy, Stell was unable to have more children, something that subsequently affected our marriage. For the next 5 years, our marriage continued happily, and as soon as Christy went to school, Stell found a job and went on to work. I really didn't want her to go to work, but as Stell pointed out, when Christy is at school and there are no younger children in the house to take care of, she goes crazy and has nothing to do with herself, so I gave in. Her first year didn't cause any problems, but then she was promoted and transferred to another department, and soon after that I got. The girls I work with want me to go for a drink with them after work. It's Wednesday, so you'll have to take care of dinner for yourself and Christy. What bothered me the most at that moment was that there was no, "you won't mind if I," or even "you don't mind if." I was, in fact, directly told that she would do it, whether I like it or not. I was smart enough not to make a fuss about it, but I wasn't happy. For the first few weeks, she came home at 6:45, then it was 7:15, and then 8:15. It bothered me a bit and I grumbled about it, which of course led to some coldness in the bedroom for a while, but at the time I was too busy to dwell on it, as I had just been promoted. Fred Bascom died, and I was transferred to his place. Fred managed several projects, and most of the information on these projects was in his head, not on paper or in his work computer, and died with him. As a result, I tried my best to combine the projects and meet the deadlines. The work was also related to business trips. The trips were short-lived, mostly for one night, sometimes for two. By the time this happened, I had made 12 trips. Stell usually left for work about an hour before me, so I had to walk Christy to school. I was in the bedroom, and Christy was there with me. She chatted incessantly about all the friends in her class. I had a meeting with a new client, and I wanted to dress like an aspiring executive. I was sorting through my ties, trying to choose one that would go well with the suit I was wearing when Christy said, "Mom has the same problem. She doesn't know what dress to wear on a date." This caught my attention, and I asked, "When does Mom go on dates?" "When you leave town." "Does Mom go on dates every time I leave town?" "Not always, but in most cases." "Is Mom's date picking her up here?" "Sometimes." "Does she bring them home with her?" "I don't know, because when she comes home, I mostly lie in bed." "Who looks after you when Mom goes on dates?" "Angie." "Sometimes Katie." These were the names of two teenage girls who lived next door. I used them both as babysitters when I took Stell to dinner and dancing, something I probably never intended to do again. I wasn't going to argue with Stell, relying on the words of a 7-year-old child. It wasn't that I doubted what Christy had told me, but I needed hard evidence. After calling a couple of detective agencies, I found out that the cost of a private investigator's services exceeds my capabilities, so I will have to do it myself. Although I really doubted this decision after I paid for 2 nights at the hotel and for 2 days rent at Avis. I told Stell that I had a 2-day trip to Chicago, packed my bag, and took it to the car when I went to work in the morning. I left work early and parked at the rental point where I could see Stell's car. When she returned from work, I walked her home. I parked a block away from her and waited to see what would happen next. About 20 minutes after we arrived, Angie Larson came to the front door and rang the bell. The door opened and she entered the house. 10 minutes later, a car stopped in front of the house. Stell came out of the house, got into it, and she drove away, and I followed her. The car pulled into the parking lot of the Alhambra Hotel, and when they got out of the car, I saw that another woman was driving. I wasn't ready for this. I thought, following them, that Stell was with another guy, and they were probably heading to a motel or somewhere else. I couldn't go into the living room to see what was going on because I didn't have anything with me to disguise myself. All I could do was sit and wait for her to come out and I could see what she would do. It turned out to be a mistake. She went out with another woman at 9:30 and went home. I went back to the hotel and tried to make sense of what I had just seen. The next day, at lunchtime, I went shopping. I bought a wig and a fake beard at a specialty store. I bought horn-rimmed sunglasses and took out the lenses. That evening, I was able to follow Stell again when she returned from work. She drove home again. Angie showed up, but this time Stell got out, got into her car, and drove away. I followed her to the Meadows neighborhood, and she stopped in front of the house. A woman got out of it, got into a car, and they drove away. This was not the woman Stell had been with last night. And once again they found themselves in the Alhambra. I gave them 5 minutes to get inside and get their bearings, and then I changed my clothes and went inside. I knew the Alhambra and knew that the bar area was poorly lit, unlike the area around the bandstand and dance floor. My disguise was banal, and I expected it to work in a dimly lit bar. If Stell had seen me, recognized me, and wanted to know what I was up to, I would have just told her the truth. I know that if I was ready for this, why didn't I just come face to face with her? And didn't tell her that I thought she was cheating on me? Based on what a 7-year-old child told me, it would change our relationship in ways I couldn't even imagine. No proof? Just a comment from a 7-year-old child? No, thanks. If there was a confrontation, it would only be if I had solid evidence. I took a seat at the far end of the bar so that I could be as far away from the dance floor as possible, but still see the dance floor. Stell and the woman she picked up were sitting at a table, actually, 2 tables pushed together, with 4 other women. At 6:45 the orchestra came in, took their seats, and at 7 they started playing. Men began to approach the table and invite the ladies to dance, and the ladies got up and went out on the dance floor. Stell had never danced with any one man individually, and all her dancing was clean and casual. At about 10 minutes to 9, the ladies started packing their bags to leave, so I got up and went in my rented car. Stell and her friend got out, got into Stell's car, and they drove out of the parking lot. I followed Stell as she drove the woman home, dropped her off, and headed back to our house. Sitting in a rented car, I called myself a dumbass for ever doubting my wife. She didn't cheat. It was just a bachelorette party, but I was just a little curious. So one night I told Stell about what Christy had told me. It makes me curious. You dress up to go on dates, and sometimes someone picks you up right at home. Do I have anything to worry about? Not really. I took advantage of your absence to meet the girls I work with. What about the guy who gives you a ride? It's not a guy who gives me a ride. This is one of the girls. We have a certain change of drivers. That explained what I saw, but I went back to having bad thoughts. When I mentioned the word dating, Stell turned pale. Why would this happen? My thoughts? Okay, if she didn't do it in the evenings, then she must have done it at other times. And the only thing I couldn't explain was her working hours. This led me to take long lunch breaks. 2 days later, I was back in the rental car and could see Stell's car in her company's parking lot. I arrived there half an hour before her usual lunch break. I knew how she usually had lunch because I took her to lunch a few times. It's a good thing I came early, because instead of noon, she left at 11:45. She got into her car, drove out of the parking lot, and headed west towards the motel. As I followed her, I asked myself why she was cheating on me. What did I do or didn't do that caused this? My thoughts were interrupted when the left turn signal came on. Taking a quick glance to the left, I saw the Best Western. Stell turned left, but instead of turning left into the motel parking lot, she turned right toward the Village Inn, which was next to the Best Western Hotel. I sat in my car and watched the entrance to the restaurant until Stell got out, and then followed her back to work. When she entered the building, I cursed myself for being such a suspicious fool. I stayed late to find out if she left work early, but she got out at the usual time and drove straight home. But I rented an apartment for 3 days, so, more to punish myself than anything else, I spent the next 2 days sitting near her workplace in a rented car, bored to tears. She never left the building at lunchtime and never left early. I rented out the apartment and hurried home. When I got there, Stell was cooking dinner. After eating, I played with Christy until she went to bed, and then Stell and I sat huddled together on the couch and watched TV until we went to bed. When I came out of the bathroom, I found Stell on the bed with a smile on his face. I asked myself how I could ever doubt this woman. Months have passed, but there is such a thing called human nature, and it affects all of us in one way or another. In my case, Christy planted suspicions in me, and they haven't gone away. It probably wouldn't have stuck in my mind, but in one corner of my brain, the way Stell behaved before we got married was deposited. This and what Christy told me came together and grew. I was always looking for signs that Stell was cheating on me, but I never saw anything. It was a 2-day trip and I wasn't supposed to get home until Friday night, but we finished our business by Thursday evening. I was able to take an early morning flight on Friday and was home early enough to drop by Stell's place and invite her to lunch. I didn't see Stell's car in the parking lot, so I went inside and asked the secretary to call Stell. Imagine my surprise when I was told that Stell doesn't work on Fridays and that about 6 months ago she switched to a 4-day work week. I left wondering what Stell was doing on those off-duty Fridays, which I didn't know anything about. I kept my cool and pretended to be fat, dumb, and happy. I was neither fat nor happy, but dumb was definitely right for me, and everything was going fine. But the next Friday found me again in a rented car parked a little further down the street from our house. Stell got out a little after 9, and I followed her to 1496 Windsong Drive. I recognized this place. I've been there half a dozen times for barbecues and parties. It belonged to Harvey Forbes. Harvey owned the business where Stell worked. Harvey wasn't her boss. Her boss was Dave Wisner. Dave was 3 or 4 steps below Harvey in the management hierarchy. She left the house at 4:30, and I followed her to King Soopers, where I assumed she was going to buy everything she was going to cook for dinner that evening. She didn't have time for anything else, and she beat me to it. So I gave up the chase, rented a car, and then went to Bud's bar for a beer before heading home at the usual time. After dinner, we sat Christy in front of the TV to watch Dora the Explorer while we washed the dishes. I washed and dried the dishes. Handing her a plate, I asked, "How long and why?" "What? How long and why? How long and why what? How long have you been cheating on me with Harvey Forbes and why? Are you completely crazy? Spare me the indignation, okay? I came back early last Friday and stopped by to invite you to lunch, only to find out that you no longer work on Fridays. There's something you forgot to tell me. Naturally, I was curious to see what you were doing on your free Fridays, so I followed you to Harvey's this morning, sat outside and watched you until you left at 4:30. So, back to my question. How long and why?" She stood with a plate in her hand and stared at the sink for a few seconds, and then said, 7 months, and because I wanted it. Is that what you wanted? I wanted to have something interesting in my life. Before I met you, I had a dozen boyfriends. Even after I met you, I had a couple of hobbies. I liked making love to different guys. They were all different. Different heights, shapes, different ways to make love. Then we got married. In all these years, I have remained faithful to you. I've seen and met a lot of guys who made me wonder what they'd be like in bed, but I just watched and wondered. It was a Christmas party in my company. You told me that I could have fun and that you would be the driver for the whole night. By 2/3 of the party, I was already in a pretty good mood. I went to the bathroom, and when I came out, Harvey was just coming out of the men's room, saw me and said that I looked good that night, and then said that if I wasn't married, he would have thrown me over his shoulder and carried me back to his cave. I knew he was just flirting, and I think I surprised him when I told him that my marriage wouldn't stop him. He didn't say a word. He just held out his hand to me. I took it, and he led me down the hall to an empty office. He used me on the table, and when it was over, he said he wanted more than a quickie, and I asked him to tell me where and when. He said he would contact me about it, and we returned to the party. I felt so horny that I damn near killed you when we got home. I used you 5 times that night, more than ever, and I still wanted more. I couldn't leave you alone that weekend. You really used me on Sunday. Remember? I did so, and I was wondering what had gotten into her. She continued her story. On Monday, Harvey asked me to come to his office and asked if I meant it when I said when and where. To be honest, that's not what I meant. It was just something I said in a rush, but when I stood in front of his desk and saw the look of desire on his face, it changed something in me, and I told him I wasn't joking. He told me to lock the door and then use me on his desk. After that, he asked me to take up one of the new 4-day positions that were being opened so that we could spend the whole day together. She sighed and said, "While it was going on, it was fun. You sound like you're going to leave old Harvey. Now that you know, I'm going to have to do it." "Why? Why what? Why are you stopping just because I know?" "What? Would you let me spend Friday with Harvey?" "I wouldn't let you do anything. It's your choice who you make love to. It doesn't matter to me at all." "Oh, wow. I didn't expect this. If someone had told me that you wouldn't mind me dating other men, I would have laughed at them. You really won't mind? Why should I object? This is your body, not mine. I can't tell you what you can and can't do with it. What I can tell you is that since you saw fit to give it to someone else, I don't need it anymore." "What do you mean by that?" "Just what I said. When you said yes, you devoted yourself exclusively to me. The fact that you gave yourself to Mr. Forbes means that you no longer belong only to me. And as for my wife, I don't share anything with her. You're not mine anymore. You belong to Harvey now, or someone else you decide to give yourself to. When we've washed the dishes, I'll move my things to the guest bedroom." "Why? What I did didn't do any harm to us. I give you so much, but sometimes you push me away. I'm still madly in love with you. The fact that I had a little love on the side did not in the least diminish my affection for you. Maybe not, but my attitude towards you has definitely decreased. It hurts. I think you're overreacting. I'm not interested in what you think anymore. I'm dealing with facts, not thoughts. The first fact is that you cheated on me, and I found out about it. The second fact is that I can't maintain a relationship with someone I can't trust, and by cheating on me, you prove that I can't trust you. Fact 3. The divorce laws in this state are against men, so if I file for divorce, I'll be penniless and living in a tent somewhere in the woods, and I'll have a limited number of dates. Such a combination of circumstances is unacceptable to me, so there will be no divorce. Instead, I will move all my things to the guest bedroom, and life in this house will continue as before, except that there will be no relationship between you and me. Mr. Forbes can take care of your needs." Having said that, I left her in the kitchen and headed for the guest bedroom. About 5 minutes later, she appeared in the hall and silently watched me. After a while, she said, "What can I do to change your mind? I love you, and you know it. I don't want that. I need you in my bed so I can make love to you. What can you do? Go back to the past before you contacted Forbes, and don't do it." Damn it, Bob. Can't you realize that I want you, not Forbes? I love you and make love to you half a dozen times a week. Don't do this to me. Because you love me? Don't bullshit me. Long before Harvey, I tried so often to get you to make love to me that sometimes you pushed me away. That was then, and this is now. Good. Then how about I play dirty? What? There's no way I'm going to be able to sleep across from you, and I'm going to want to kick down your door and jump on your bones. So I'm going to have to move out. And if I do, I might as well file for divorce. On what basis? I don't need a reason. This state is without blame. You know what's going to happen. You just said it yourself. You're going to live in a tent somewhere and maybe see Christy once a month or so. The courts will grant you visitation rights, but you will have to contact me to make arrangements, and no doubt I will be difficult to contact at times. On the other hand, you'll only have to pay child support until I get married again, and I'm sure Harvey will jump at the chance to put a ring on my finger. He has always wanted children, but he cannot have children because he is infertile. He was always jealous that we had Christy. I think he would be a great stepfather for Christy. You wouldn't. Do you want to bet? I'll make it easier for you. You don't have to come back to our bedroom. All you have to do is walk through the lobby and use it at least 5 times a week, and your first visit should be tonight. As a bonus, I'll stop seeing Harvey. I'll leave the light on for you, she said, heading into the living room. She had me, and she knew it. I knew her too well. When she pulled herself together over something, nothing could stop her from rushing forward at full speed. For me, it was a case where you'd be damned if you did it and damned if you didn't, all because of a word spoken in my ear by a 7-year-old child. Shine. End.